Hi, welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I'll be featuring the case of Mary Bell. This was a case suggestion by a friend of the show, Mega Zorlak. Thank you, Mega Zorlak, for the case recommendation. Now, let's go ahead and find out more. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Mary Flora Bell was born on May 26, 1957. She lived in the Scotswood area of Newcastle, United Kingdom. She was the first-born child to Betty, who was only about 16, 17 years old when she had her. Soon after giving birth to Mary, Betty married a man named Billy Bell. Betty was a prostitute who was often absent from the family home. It is not known for sure who Mary's biological father was. Most of her life, Mary believed it was Billy. He was a career criminal, mostly out of work, and was later arrested for armed robbery. Several accounts from family members suggest that Betty had attempted to kill Mary and make her death look like an accident. And this occurred more than once during the first few years of her life. This was done by giving Mary drugs, and frequently she had overdoses. Betty would also frequently leave Mary with relatives or acquaintances. In one instance, she actually gave Mary away to a woman she had met just outside on the street, standing outside of an abortion clinic. At 2 years old, Mary was having a hard time and refusing to bond with other people. She had already began behaving in a cold and detached manner. She never cried when she was hurt. She began lashing out violently. She even smashed her uncle's nose with a toy. Mary claimed that she was subjected to repeated sexual abuse, specifically that her mother forced her to engage in sex acts with men from the age of 5 years old. The area where Mary grew up was a low-income area. Domestic violence and criminal behavior was extremely common. At school, Mary had a reputation for being a chronic liar, being disruptive, for theft, vandalism, and for attacking other children. On occasion, she would voice her desire, quote, to hurt people, end quote. May 11th, 1968, Mary and her friend Norma were playing with a 3-year-old boy on top of the Newcastle air raid shelter. The boy fell and was severely injured. The incident was written off as accidental. May 12th, 1968, the mothers of 3 young girls informed police that Mary had attacked and choked their children. Mary was interviewed and lectured by authorities, but no juvenile charges were filed. May 25th, 1969, 2 boys who were playing in an old abandoned house found the corpse of a 4-year-old boy, Martin Brown, lying in an upstairs room. Mary and Norma had followed the boys inside, but were ordered out when the police arrived. With no obvious cause of death, the police had assumed Martin had swallowed pills because there was a discarded bottle that was found nearby. May 26, 1969, Norma's father caught Mary choking his 11-year-old daughter. He slapped Mary's face and sent her home. Later that same day, a local school nursery was vandalized. Police had discovered notes at the school, one saying, quote, "We did murder Martin Brown. Fuck off, you bastard," end quote. May 30th, 1969, Mary arrived at the Brown family home, asking to see Martin. Reminded of the tragedy, she told his mother, quote, "Oh, I know he's dead. I wanted to see him in his coffin," end quote. May 31st, 1969, The nursery school was vandalized again. This time, however, a newly installed burglar alarm made sure police rushed to the school right away. When the police arrived, they found Mary and Norma wandering beside of the building. Both girls denied any involvement in the previous break-in, and they were released to the custody of their parents. 2 months later, the Newcastle community had a disappearance of a 3-year-old boy named Brian Howe. They immediately started a search. Mary told Brian's sister that he might have been playing on a heap of concrete blocks that had been dumped out by a nearby vacant lot. Well, what do you know? Brian's body was discovered there among the tumbled slabs. He had died from manual strangulation. His legs and stomach were mutilated with a razor and a pair of scissors. An M was carved into his stomach. Police recovered the murder weapons because they were still at the scene. The medical examiner suggested that the killer might have been a child, since there was little force that was used on the boy. Detectives started circulating questionnaires among the local children, asking them to account for their movements around the time of Brian's death. Answers from Mary and Norma were inconsistent, so both girls were brought in by police for questioning. Mary claimed that she had been and seen an older boy abusing Brian. Norma, however, broke down right away. She told police that she watched Mary kill Brian. August 5th, 1969, Mary was arrested for murder. When being told by police why she was being arrested, she replied, quote, "That's all right by me," end quote. December 17th, 1968, at trial, Norma was acquitted on all charges. Meanwhile, Mary Bell was convicted on 2 counts of manslaughter. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. Court psychiatrist described Mary as, quote, "intelligent, manipulative, and dangerous," end quote. They found that she displayed, quote, "classic symptoms of psychopathy," end quote. The judge described her as dangerous, and she posed a, quote, "very grave risk to other children," end quote. Mary was a problem inmate from the start. In 1970, she fabricated charges of indecent assault against one of her warders, but the man was acquitted in court. September 1977, Mary escaped from prison with another inmate. They were captured only 3 days later. However, while they were on the run, they met and spent the night with 2 boys. Mary even spoke to the tabloids about this, making headlines, offering a blow-by-blow account of how she ended up giving up her virginity. May 14th, 1980, Mary, now 23 years old, was released from the Young Offenders Institute in prison. She was given a new identity. Her first job was in the local children's nursery, but the probation officers ended up deeming this inappropriate work for her, so she had to stop. She took waitress jobs and attended a university, but was too discouraged to stick with it. Mary ended up moving back in with her mother when she met a man and became pregnant. May 25th, 1984, Mary gave birth to a daughter. In 1998, a biography called Cries Unheard, the story of Mary Bell, was published. There was an uproar when it was discovered that she had been paid to help with the story. Mary's daughter did not know anything about her mother's past until Mary's location was discovered by reporters. They had to leave their house with bed sheets over their heads, reportedly. Mary's daughter, anonymity, was originally protected only until she reached the age of 18. However, on May 21st, 2003, Mary won a high court battle to have her own anonymity and that of her daughter extended for life. Any court order permanently protecting the identity of someone is now known as Mary Bell Order. In 2009, Mary, 51 years old, became a grandmother. June Richardson, whose 4-year-old son, Martin Brown, was suffocated by Mary, said of this, quote, "A child is a blessing. She took my blessing and left me with grief for the rest of my life. I hope when she looks at this child, she remembers the 2 she murdered. I will never see a grandchild from my son. I hope every time she looks at this baby, she realizes what my family are missing out on because of what she has done." End quote. And that is the case of Mary Bell. Thank you for sticking around for another episode of Danny After Dark. And thank you, Megazorlac, for the case suggestion. Do you have any questions or comments on the case? Leave it down below. Let's be interactive. Do you have a suggestion for a case that you'd like me to cover? Well, leave it down below. You may see it featured in an upcoming episode. Until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us.